What he said, what she said, what they said.
Greetings, everyone. Another episode. This is another episode of Ginger Talks. I'm Pat, and that is.
Girl, cash money.
And on this episode, we're going to talk about fathers, fatherhood, black fathers, how black women see black fathers, all kinds of things. Since we just passed Father's Day, um, the first thing I wanted to start off with about that is why do mothers get all the pomp and circumstance and fathers get tossed to the side? I get socks and a happy Father's Day. I don't get to taken out to dinner and all the other type stuff. What's up with that? Why does
Well,
that happen?
I can't speak to that because but I think it depends on the individuals. Really, I know a lot of fathers get a lot of slack because generally the saying is there's more deadbeat dads than good dads or whatever. But I think
Mm,
the I think it depends on the relationship that the kids have with the
mm-hmm,
parent. Typically growing up, the kids don't have anything. I think it's more difficult. They don't have money unless they're older. The younger kids don't. But I know in schools, they're trying to make things and do things for the parents on Father's Day, Mother's Day, whatever. But I think it generally has to do with the relationship of the parents if they're not together in the same household. I don't
mm,
think one is more important than the other, but as you alluded to in another episode, you talked about children and mothers being tied to each other from the womb. So that starts the
mm,
bonding process a lot sooner. Um, I just think it depends on the relationship you have with your significant other or your children's mother if you guys are not in the same household. And I think it goes back to, as we talked about before, a couple episodes, the co-parenting relationship or the lack of a co-parent relationship and a healthy
mm,
relationship and being accountable. Um, you know, I can only speak from, of course, my experience. Growing up, I didn't always have money. Um, my dad passed away when I wasn't really even an adult. I was 19 years old. And the crazy
mm,
part about it is being that Father's Day just passed. My grandmother said to my siblings that particular instance that I was the only one that called or and went and saw my dad or gave him a card for Father's Day. And
mm,
coincidentally, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, my dad passed away.
mm,
Um, but I wholeheartedly believe it depends on the relationship the children have with their father and what's instilled in them. Um,
mm,
my father wasn't in my household, but my siblings would tell you, and some of them, and they seemed to feel like I was my dad's favorite. I didn't feel like I was my
mm,
dad's favorite, but I was a
mm,
daddy's girl. And I wanted to be around my
mm,
dad. I wanted to talk to my dad. So my dad was a present dad, even though we didn't live
mm,
in the same household. Um, and I think
mm.
that's really what it comes down to, honestly.
Okay. So you just touched on something because I am apart from my daughters, but uh, however, I try to be as present as I can, right?
Right.
Um, matter of fact, matter of fact, at the end, well, next Tuesday, not so we're recording on a Tuesday. So next Tuesday, I'm supposed to go get my youngest, and have her for the entire summer. And so, how does you've been in a household where your father wasn't physically present, right? How does that translate in your view of fatherhood or being or of your father and fathers that are doing their best to be there, but aren't physically there? What? How does that?
I think
How does that?
I think it all comes back down to what you said before, accountability. Um I think if you have the means, you can still be there. Even if you're not living there 24/7. I think a lot of individuals or non-custodial parents or whoever, I think they mistake or they take advantage of the opportunity they have when they're with the parents, with the other parent, and they're in the house. And we touched on this
Mhm.
before, being present but not really being present. And I think
Mhm.
when you don't live in the same household, that's amplified. You miss out on the little things that you would, of course, just being there. But I think it takes a willing individual. You have to want to give that 100% effort to say, um, no matter what, I'm gonna be there. Just thinking back to growing up, there were times my dad wasn't there, but I can tell you what, my dad never missed a birthday. I can't remember not hearing from my dad on my birthday, missing a birthday. He kept in touch about my grades. He was at my high school graduation. So, I never felt like I was missing out on my dad. Now, just the kid in me want my dad to be there every day. Yeah, okay, that regard. But as far as the things that I felt like I needed, um, I felt like I got him because he was still present, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. He made a
Well,
point to still be an active participant. Um,
I,
and of course, we were in the same city, so I know sometimes when you have parents that live in different cities, that can be a challenge, work schedules. But I think if you have a schedule, a system, I think with anything, whether you're in the house, and we've talked about this before, whether you're two parents in the house or you're two parents not in the house and you're separate, it still comes down to consistency and scheduling. Because if we were in the same house, we would have
mhm.
to schedule and coordinate, community. And we've talked about this before with my situation and everything. We would have to coordinate who's gonna pick up the kid, where they're going. It's still a level of communication, even in the house, that has to take place as two
Yeah.
parents. That
Yeah.
same level of communication has to take place between two parents if we don't live in the same house. So
Yeah.
I feel like there is no difference. It's just a matter of if both parties are a willing participant and put in the consistency and the effort to communicate for the sake of the kids. And a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah. Well, I've got a pretty unique perspective on it. It might not be too unique, but I was there, married. I was there. I have two daughters. They're what, 11 and getting ready to be 9, and I was there with them when they were 5, all the way up to 5 and 3, right? And I definitely was present and wanted to be present uh, at that point in time. And I regret missing my 8-year-olds or getting ready to be 9. Her time is a 3 or 4-year-old, right? Me and her mother were going through a separation, going through a divorce at that point in time, and it was really contentious. And so I was in a different place with even being able to see them, right, and talk to them. Um, so I didn't show up the way I needed to. I admitted that. I take responsibility. I take accountability, hold myself accountable for that. And I've talked to my ex-wife about that, apologized, and I'm doing better, right? But it's still a constant try to do better because, I got a crazy work schedule, right? So my work schedule is I might be off. I'm only off one day a week. So I'm working 6 days a week. And then I might go in early and work 4 hours and then come back later in the day and work another four. Or, I might work 8 hours straight. It's just a crazy schedule. So I'm dog tired all the time. And then I'm separated geographically from them. And there's a time difference in a lot of things. But it is my responsibility. It's not even on my kids to contact me, to talk to me, to even say Happy Father's Day, right? My eldest daughter called me and told me Happy Father's Day. My middle daughter called me the day before, left me a voice message, told me call her when I got off work. I called her when she got off work. She was nowhere to be found. Right, an 8-year-old. How can you be nowhere to be found? But she was nowhere to be found. She was busy.
Disappeared.
But
She
I
said
talked
she was
to
booked and busy.
yeah. Marisol was always busy. My baby's always busy. I'm sorry. And then my baby uh called me on Father's Day as well. But I say I have a unique perspective because I can understand wanting your father to be there uh physically because I'm away, and then wanting to be with my children physically, even though because we're apart, even though it's a divorce and separation and all that, and you know, ending of a relationship and all that other stuff. Two, I had my dad, right? I have my dad. I grew up in a 2-parent household, and there were some days I didn't want my daddy to be to come home, right? I didn't want my daddy to be there. So, because it was like, yeah, my mama, one of I had that mama that's gonna tell your daddy, I'm gonna tell your daddy. I had that mom. So, uh, my mama, there are days I didn't want my daddy to come home, right, from work or whatever, and deal with
Right.
me. But I think overall, being, fatherhood is an amazing thing. They say that, you don't become a father until the baby comes out. I guess that's true. Mothers are mothers from conception, but fathers aren't fathers until the baby comes out. But I think there's a fallacy in that because I'm a father at conception, right? Like going through the pregnancy when I was with my wife, and then when I was with my ex-partner,
And
going
see,
through a
and I was gonna
pregnancy
say,
with her.
I think that's a fallacy too,
Yeah.
because, and I've told the ladies this. So, you're hitting on a point because I know a few people that were pregnant at the same time that I had my oldest. Um,
Mhm.
some were in relationships. One was going through the process. So the one baby is a few months older than my oldest. The other babies are a few months younger than my oldest. And we were at various stages in our pregnancy. I, of course, was the only one married at the time. And I think I've shared this with you before, but I know I've shared this with the ladies. Um, I felt like during my pregnancy, since you're talking about being there, and you can be there, I don't think that's a fallacy. But I felt like, and I've said to you before as well, this was the beginning of the demise of my marriage, because I felt like I went through that process alone, and I was married to somebody. They were, as we've always talked about, they were present, but they were not
Mhm.
knowingly present or aware. They were not cognizant of their surroundings.
Okay.
So I
Let me ask you.
wholeheartedly believe that you can be present from conception to there if you want to be a willing participant. Um,
As a father, I got a question. Because from what you said a second ago, how can a father that's there physically going through a pregnancy, because a lot of pregnant ladies say that a lot of pregnant ladies, even though their husband or their boyfriend or whoever is there with them going through a pregnancy with them, they say they feel alone at some point, right? How can a young man or a new father uh going through a pregnancy with someone, how can he show up better so that she doesn't feel alone?
um, what I said before, and I'll say it again. In everything, communication is key. Listening. Communication isn't just speaking, it's being an active listener. Um, I worked my entire pregnancy up until um I got induced, pretty much. And
Hmm.
it was a lot for me. But I had to endure. First of all, I couldn't keep anything down. And early on, that was an issue because he wanted to try to even tell me what to eat. And I'm like, this is my body. I'm gonna eat what I can keep down. I'm not a bad eater. I love salads. But my pregnancy, going into the summer months, I couldn't eat salads. I had really bad indigestion, heartburn. Cucumbers were the death of me. So much so to this point, even now, I can't eat a cucumber without getting heartburn. The initial stages of my pregnancy, I'll say the first 6 months, all I could have was pop, ice cream, mashed potatoes, and steak. Any type of potatoes, I was fine. I was very limited on the stuff I could eat. Otherwise, I would be sick. But that individual complained about me eating ice cream. And it took another female, an older female, to say to him, let her eat whatever she can keep down. And I'm like, I'm going to the doctor. I'm taking my vitamins, prenatal pills and everything. I know I need to eat something. Something is better than nothing, even if it was just ice cream. I think a lot of men are not understanding of the complexity in and of itself of pregnancy and what a woman gives to bring another life into this earth. And I'm not even talking about the appearance. Okay, I was pregnant, 27 years old. First time I got a cavity. Why? The baby takes everything from you. So you can be a healthy individual and you can start to have health problems because you're breeding and feeding another body. So you heard me say I was 27 years old and I ate candy, whatever, brushed my teeth, everything. And I'm like, it took for me to get pregnant to get my first cavity. The stretch marks, just the everything. The last month I had round ligament pain, meaning my hips were hurt and everything. Like and I can't speak for all women, but when women say be present, it's those things. Do you know my ex-husband went to the first doctor's appointment, the doctor's appointment where we found out the sex of our child, and no other doctor's appointments. I was doing them by myself because he didn't want to take off from work. He didn't have the time to take off from work. We went to the parenting class together, the birthing class together. We went to the hospital when my labor was being induced. I got my epidural. The nurse held my hand. So much so to the point that every time my ex-husband would come into the room, they were like, who are you? Who is this? Because he wasn't even there. I saw more of the nurses than I did my ex-husband from the time they took me in up until the time they determined I needed to have a C-section. Mind you, this was both our first child. So, there's all kind of emotions, tensions, whatever. During my C-section, and when he cut the umbilical cord, that was the longest time I had saw him. Now, for context, I got up at 4:00 in the morning to go to be induced, and I didn't have my oldest till almost 10 o'clock that night. So you do the math. I know he's gonna say, or he would say, because he said before, well, I worked the night before and there was a major snowstorm. At the time we lived in Illinois, Chicago, and he was stuck on the highway for a few hours, so he wanted some sleep. And I'm like, I get that, but guess what? While you were stuck on the highway, I wasn't asleep. I was up too. Worried about you, worried about labor, bringing this baby in here, all this stuff, a lot of emotions that were not addressed, that, as I said before, wasn't communicated. You couldn't, I'm not gonna say wasn't communicated, wasn't received. It was, for me, of course, it was a reminder of some more first. You know, as I said before, both of my parents are deceased, so neither one of them got to see me get married. So I'm sitting here. This is the first grandchild that I'm having for them, and they're not going to be there for that. So there was a lot of other emotions that tried to be communicated and things that, yeah, my partner just was not present for in any capacity that I needed him to be.
So,
So
there's a point where, because I hear you, and there's a point where to address the fatherhood piece of it, right? For me, I was that present. I was there for every doctor's appointment for both, for my ex-wife and my ex-partner, right? But there were times when so I'll tell this quick story. But let me address what you were saying first. That's fatherhood. The way I'm going to address the fatherhood, because there's a partner piece or a better half piece there too, right? But the fatherhood part should have, I would say, would have kicked in for me that she's carrying my child, so I have to. There are certain things that you have to do. So there's an emotional connection, right? That has to be established, and understanding and communication, right? There has to be an understanding also what fathers don't address and what black men don't address and what men don't address, but what black men especially don't address is you going through something too, bro. Okay, yeah, you're going through something too. But what you got to understand is we don't get the we don't get the you have no room to complain, right? So I say that because it's just like when I go to work. There are other people that work the same crazy shift that I do, right? So I don't complain. I just get up and go do it because I know there are other people working this shift, right? There are other people doing this crazy work. Um, so she's doing she's doing a lot of crazy work. It's her body, right? You don't have to sacrifice anything. You can still get up and go and do whatever you want to. So there's a part where you have to step up and know that that's as a father, right? The fatherhood piece could kick in. I could not like you as a partner. I can't, I could, there's points where uh my pregnant wife couldn't stand me and I couldn't stand my pregnant wife, but at the same time, she's still carrying my baby, right? So there's a part where the fatherhood kicks in to where you got to be there no matter what. I say all that to say when we don't address the fact that we're going through something and that we can, you need to build a network. This is so what I'm getting at is you need to build a network. As a black father, as a black man, you need to step outside yourself, even if you're an introvert like I am, and talk to other black fathers, right? Talk to other black men, talk to other men and say, hey, I'm going through this. How did you deal with it? And then be willing to learn and not be, I can't. So one of the things that I had to deal with, and even at 40, I had to deal with. I didn't want to get into this men's group, right? There's this. I'm bringing this back full circle, right? So there's this men's group that I didn't want to join because I felt I've been being a man for a long time, and there's no way another man can tell me as a grown man how to man, right? So I was like, I don't need to take no advice. At the same time, my partner at the time was like, hey, I can see you're going through some stuff, right? There are other men in this group going through the same thing, right? And I'm like, nah, they're trying to tell me how to be a man, and I know how to be a man. And so finally, I went ahead and just admitted to myself, hey, you know what? Just go see what she's talking about, right? And it worked out. It was a group, it was a community, building a community, which led me down another road for a whole spiritual evolution, right? So sometimes you need to put aside the ego of I can't. Another man is not going to tell me how to be a man, or another dad is not going to tell me how to be a dad, or I need to build the experience. Whatever your ego is telling you, and sometimes you have to set that aside for your children, right? You have to set that aside for your partner, and then understanding that pregnancy is like the ultimate thing to go through, right? Because you going through pregnancy, um, and it changes your body, it changes your chemistry, it changes your mental makeup, it changes,
Everything.
how you think. It changes everything because it changes how you think you present to us, right? Like I know my ex-wife and my ex-partner, they're both after the postpartum or even just leading up to it is like, no, how could you even want they both got to a point where they was like, how could you even want me? I don't even look good. Like, no, you look, and I'm sitting there saying you look great, right? But it changes how you feel about yourself and how you think we feel about you, right? So part of being a father and in that fatherhood mode is also nurturing your partner through that, right? So yeah, like I said, I say all that to say we need to address and build community in the black men's space, right? Of fathers that have been through pregnancies, fathers that have been through divorces, fathers that have been through separations, fathers that have been through divorces and gotten back. Father, you know what I mean? Just fathers in general
But I
communicating with
think
each
that,
other.
but I think that goes to something you said, and it,
Mm,
it, it has to be that specifically the Black male has to let go of the ego that can't nobody tell me anything about being a man and learning from other people's experiences. I'm a firm believer that not to grow, you never stop learning. And part of that learning sometimes can be by osmosis and not actually by trial. You don't have to go through every lesson you get, does not have to be by your own actual experience. You can learn from somebody else's experiences. And I think specifically for Black men, I don't want to say it's a chip, but they have this thing about not wanting to open up and not wanting anybody to tell them things. And it takes me to a point that you said before, because I saw this somewhere else as well. It starts with their relationship with their mother and how the mother treats them, whether they force them to be the man of the house or whether they spoil them and say ain't nobody gonna do nothing. All of that, I'm
mm,
not gonna say absolute, but for a lot of Black males, it starts with how their mothers show up in their lives or not show up in their lives. And therefore
that's
that translates into what type of man, husband, father they may be. Because there are men that are fathers who didn't have a father and they're great
mm,
fathers. They found the
mm,
reason to be a great father. There are men who
mm,
didn't have fathers that continue that cycle. That was one of the debates I had with my ex about parenting as well. We have to acknowledge our parents did the best thing that they could at the time. But at the same time, we could say that not everything they did was beneficial or helpful. I'm
mhm,
learning in my experience, there's some things that my parents did that I just didn't find effective. So I don't use those tools in my parenting toolkit. Doesn't mean my
mhm,
parents were bad parents. It's just those things
mm,
didn't work for me. So I don't want to pass those things down. And I
mhm,
think men, specifically Black men, sometimes they it's always this. It's either gonna be my way because I'm the man, and that's it. As you said before, you can't teach me nothing. You can't tell me this. I already know mentality. And as opposed to recognizing if this person is here, they supposed to have my back. They're not putting me in harm's way. They're not.
uh,
They're not
I get you.
trying to come to me. They looking out for my best interest. Sometimes
I,
we gonna hear stuff we just don't want to hear about ourselves. Um,
I,
but we have to
I
be
get
aware and willing and open to accept that.
I get your point, but well, there are some instances where that behavior is learned from their mother, though. that it's my way or the highway. Yeah, a lot of these dudes that didn't have fathers present get there from their mother. And then when they do it, it turns around and it's an issue. Get what I'm saying? Like when your
Yeah,
mother does it, when your mother does it, it's not an issue. But when you do it as a man, now women looking at you and saying, you got you you can learn from someone else. You can learn from a woman that wait a minute. Now, when you put your foot down, is your way or the highway too. You get what I'm saying? So it's like there is a I'm a black man in America, so I can tell you there is a point of powerlessness, right? Where there's no win. There's no winning with anybody. I can't win in the white world. I can't win in the black world. There's no way of winning. Most I can tell you, even successful black men, there's a point where you can feel like that, right? Like I can't win. There's no winning, because there's always that dynamic. Like there's always that. It's okay. It's okay when you do it, but it's not when I do it. You know what I mean? So
right.
I get it, and to take the accountability and hold just myself accountable for actions like that. Yeah, I get it. I understand. But then it's always like it's funny, um, because again, I always want to take accountability and understand accountability, but also I don't want to be that dude that's like not all men, because there are dudes that are horrible, right? Like, and then there the dude that goes, well, not all men are like that. Not all men are like that, but that doesn't have to be said, right? I'm not trying to. That's not what I'm trying to say. That's not what I'm trying to
Right.
do. What I am trying to say is there are situations where dudes are stubborn and bullheaded, but they learn that from their mama. You get what I'm saying? They might have been a totally different person if they didn't see that my way or the highway and they didn't get it. It's not just part of the black male ego. It's kind of bred into them. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So that sometimes there's a broad statement about black men and being bullheaded and being, stuck in ego. And I can say from examples of my friends, myself, no, because I grew up with two parents. I grew up with an even keel. I grew up with a father. Yeah, my father can be bullheaded sometimes, but my mother is very stubborn. My mother is super stubborn. Like, so I grew up with seeing both sides, right, and understanding that. But and then I understand that there are things that I'm not gonna do. My just because
I think that
it's
comes
too
from,
much work.
and I think too, again, that comes from, as I said before, what the mother is putting in and the place that they're operating from. The saying is, generational curses are a thing for a reason. If you're not self-aware
Mhm.
of your traumas and then you're nurturing another child, you're going to nurture those traumas into that child, those curses, that trauma, the damage, with certain things. And for whatever reason, there's women that'll tell you, men as well, they parent boys different than they parent girls. For some reason, um, there's some women that feel like boys are not supposed to cry. They don't get to toughen
Mhm.
up, be tough. So you don't even allow them that outlet at home to convey their full emotions. So
Mhm.
if I have to constantly numb who I am at home, how am I going to show up in the world as a whole person? You can't.
Mm.
So you're right. I think it's a detriment to men who grew up in households where their father wasn't present, whether physically present or emotionally not present. Because, like we said, you can be there and not be there
Yeah.
as well. And that could be just as harmful as if you
Yeah.
wasn't physically there. So I think that's the thing, and of course that's the stereotypical and the ego of some men ain't supposed to cry toughen up. I had to get it out the mud, so you gotta get it out the mud. And I hate that
Yeah.
saying because it's like if you look at it, each generation advances. So why do they have to grind and get it out the mud if the purpose is for them to have a better generation. So I don't sometimes don't understand that philosophy on certain
Yeah.
things. If I had to get out the mud, you got to get out the mud. Well, that wasn't the goal. Um, at
Mm-hmm.
least for me, when I became a parent, I don't want my kids to have to go through the struggles that I necessarily did. The goal, generally, as a parent, is to give your kids a better life than what you have, right? Is it
Mm-hmm.
not? So, why do, and I'm not just talking from a wealth or educational standpoint, but I'm also talking about from an emotional standpoint. So why do we
Mm-hmm.
want our kids to suffer and go through traumas that we know how they felt? And that was one of the things that I told my ex-husband. I was like, there's certain things, there were certain things that when they got said or done to you, you know how it made you feel. So put yourself back
Mm-hmm.
in that kid's spot and how you feel. So why would you take and do the same thing if you know how it made you feel? How do you think it's gonna make your kid feel?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and that's where for me in the parenting process, again, it's not a judgment of my parents, but it's an awareness. I know how this made me feel when certain things were done, and it kind of made me pivot this way versus an ass whooping sometimes was not the answer when a conversation would have sufficed. So I was cognizant of that because I'm like, okay, you just whipped my ass. That wasn't a lesson. I just got beat. And to the point where whoopings, and we've talked about this before, where whoopings became ineffective. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna just do this because all I know I'm gonna just get my butt beat versus
Mm-hmm.
talking. And it's like I can say, looking back, there were things I did that I probably
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have done if a
Mm-hmm.
conversation was had versus just getting a whooping because the whooping was ineffective. I still ended up doing what I wanted to do. Sometimes even the smartest kid in the room still need the dots connected on certain things because they may be smart about this, but they're not smart in life. They can have, and we talk about it. There's book sense and then there's common sense. They don't always go
Mm-hmm.
together. They're not always on the same level at the same time. And I feel like as a parent, that's where you gotta be aware and present for your kids to know, okay, you got all these book sense, but let me give you some of this common sense. Cause whooping your ass ain't gonna give you the whys of what I'm saying to you for later. You need these nuggets for later, and an ass whooping is not gonna do that. And so he didn't understand that sometimes. And I'm like, again,
Mm-hmm.
put yourself back in certain scenarios where you were. What were you thinking?
Yeah.
How did it make you
Yeah.
feel? Did it achieve the
Mm-hmm.
outcome that your parents wanted? Were you a better person? Are you a better person because that happened? Again, not judging the parents, but just being
Yeah.
aware that
So
not
what does
everything works.
so I can tell you one of my goals as a father is to raise my daughters with wisdom or to raise my children with wisdom, right? Because uh it's the book sense common sense thing hitting at the same time is actually wisdom, right? Because we can get there's a bunch of wisdom and knowledge in books that we don't learn in school, we don't read in school, right? So there's knowledge and then there's common sense and then you put it together and then that becomes the wisdom, right? I want to raise my children with wisdom. I want to raise my children to where they understand what you put your energy towards is what's gonna blossom, right? If you put your energy towards sleeping every day, that's the thing you're gonna fall in love with, and then it's gonna run you down because you sleep it all day, right? If you put
Absolutely.
like it's like Michael Jordan and Kobe, right? I use these examples often because Kobe is an example of Kobe was consistent with what he did. He had a killer mentality and he loved basketball, but he also understood that if he was going to use basketball to take him places, then that's what he was going to do every day, all day, right? Michael
Right.
Jordan, same thing. So I want to raise my children to understand that. I have one daughter that's a great dancer. You've seen Jackie. Jackie has been a great dancer since she's little. She's a great dancer, and I want her to step into her greatness, but she got to focus, right? My other daughter is into gymnastics and playing piano. I want them to focus and be consistent in it, right? And with the wisdom that I'm teaching them is consistency. See, what we don't teach our children, what we weren't taught. We weren't taught consistency. We were taught practice. We were taught go to school and learn, right? But we weren't taught how to be consistent.
Some of us.
Now our parents got up,
right.
Some of us weren't taught, right? Our parents, some of our parents got up and went to work every day, and they thought that's showing consistency, right? That's showing this is what you do. No, that's just showing a program. Like I get up, I go to work. This is how it's supposed to be, right? But some of us weren't taught how to be consistent in what we love to do and what we do to a point where it starts to pay off, right? So that's one of the goals of mine as a father. What does fatherhood look like to you, and what is one of your goals if you were to get with another partner or even with your co-parent, ex, whatever? What is a goal of fatherhood for you?
Well, you said it, because in my scenario, that's been the thing that's been the issue, is the lack of consistency. You know, we talk about it quite often about that's a thing for me. And you know, we discussed from a kid's perspective, that's the biggest thing. You gotta be consistent in everything. The moment you say something and you don't follow through, they can't trust your word. It just shatters everything. So for me, it's always been being consistent and showing up. Fatherhood to me has always looked like, and by any means, I'm not saying my dad was perfect, but put the kids first. Put your child first. Fatherhood, motherhood, parenthood is not about the adult. I've said it before. We've heard other individuals say it. Being a parent is a selfless job. You can't be a parent and be selfish. You can't be a parent and be selfish. You can't be selfish as a parent. You got to be selfless. Because I've said all the time to my kids, you know, even when I'm sick and don't feel well, I still got to show up as your parent. I still have to make sure, coordinate, you get to A to B, and wherever, school, you eat, whatever. It's a job. It's a selfless job. You cannot be selfish as a parent. So for me, fatherhood has always looked like that. Put your kids first, put your child first. As I said in the beginning, I have pictures of when me, my mom, and my dad were in the same household, but I don't remember because it was under the age of 2. So, but even though I have those pictures, I still know what it was like to have a present father, because even after the age of 2, I have pictures of birthdays, but I remember my dad being there for me to ride a bike, my dad being there for Easter, me going with my dad on weekends, my dad coming to have lunch at school, my dad just showing up, talking to my dad. Even when my dad wasn't around, my dad's side of the family making it a point to have their own independent relationship with me outside of my dad. So for me, fatherhood looks like what I want in my next partner is to be present and consistent.
Okay, you said go ahead. You had some more?
No, I was just saying to be present and consistent. I mean, I think that's the thing.
You said that there was a key word that I wanted to get some understanding on. Because hold on. Oh, they just started up a lot more. There, can you hear that? I mean, does it bother?
I don't hear anything.
Oh,
you're good.
So you said follow through. I want to know, what does follow from someone, because I got a like a 360 view of it, right? But I want to know, what does follow through look like? Because here's the thing. So say, for instance, my children are old enough now to understand that Yeah, I'm working. Like I missed my baby's excuse me, my baby's dance recital, her last performance. I missed it because I was working, right? I called her, break a leg. I made sure she had funds for her uniforms, all her costumes, all of that, right? But I wasn't able to be there, right? Is that follow through? Is that being present? Now, my parents were able to go down and represent for, my side of the family, themselves individually, but is that follow through? Or is follow through? I had to make sure I was there no matter what. You get what I'm saying? What does
Or
follow through look like?
so for me, follow through in since you brought your scenario up, two questions. Did you make her aware ahead of time that you were not going to be there, and asked her how she felt about it? To
Yes.
me, follow up is that, okay, communicating, letting them, just like you would communicate with the spouse. Hey, I know I said I was going to do this. This came up. I can't do that. Is that okay with you? How does this make you feel? Okay, but I'm going to do this. I can't physically be there, but I'm going to do this. And did you do this? And then coming back after it happened. Oh, I heard great things. Was it recorded? Let me watch it. Oh, I saw you do this. And you were
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Checking in. It's
Mm-hmm.
the same type of post checks that you have to do and communicate with your partner are the same level and post checks that you have to do with your kids. That's the follow through and the follow up that I'm referring
Mm-hmm.
to.
Gotcha.
You
Okay.
know, that's the thing.
Well,
I go through that a lot because mommy can't be in two places at one time. So, is a thing,
well,
hey, we have to talk about this. Oh, this is coming up. Well, I might have to be late because I got to go over here. So I might miss this, but I'm going to get there. And how are you affected? It's the checking in on the emotional, because they'll say, well, I'm fine. It's okay. You don't have to be there. But the reality is the emotion, that's the defense mechanism. And the emotional
yeah.
behind it may be the disappointment or the feeling of abandonment that, well, you don't never come support me. You don't care about me. Kids translate that
Yeah.
even if that's not what's said. So what I'm saying with the follow up and the follow through is you got to go back and have the conversation, because they are not
Mm-hmm.
adults to be able to be like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying I'm fine that you're missing this, but at the same time, it hurt my feelings that you couldn't be there. It takes a while for kids to get to that point to be able to converse and convey those emotions. There was some adults that still can't even convey those emotions. I was hurt when
Mm-hmm.
you did such and such and such. Your action.
That was a good one. I had to applaud you on that one. That was a word right there. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's that, but that's what I mean when I say the follow through. It's the going back and doing the post checking and the awareness of the emotion that, okay, because I'm fine. Just like when a
Mm-hmm.
woman says, I'm fine, and she's pissed off, you got to go back and
I'm not.
recheck that post and that emotion. So,
I ain't going. I ain't going back. You said you. that's where I've messed up with both my partners. Is I ain't going back. I'm just this is just a side note. I'm that dude that you tell me you fine. Okay, I ain't going back. Don't tell me you fine. If you mad, okay, we can hash it out. But
but I'm
don't tell
saying,
me.
but that's the in a
I
in a
get what you saying.
in an adult in a woman. Sometimes when they do that,
Yeah.
that's the game. But sometimes that's the little girl in them and not being
Mhm.
able to communicate. So, and it's not even a thing of being fine. As I said before, it's a defense mechanism so that they don't have
Mhm.
to address the real issue. Oh, I'm okay. I'm fine. So I don't have to get into what's really bothering me and bubbling up on the inside. I'm okay.
Really?
With
You mean to
children,
tell me women don't talk about their emotions sometimes? They don't want to talk about it? I'm shocked.
I don't think it's a
I'm
thing of not
shocked.
wanting to
I
talk.
thought it was
I don't know.
only,
I don't think it's a
I
thing of
thought it was
not
only men.
wanting. talk about it. And you know, we talked about this before. Sometimes it's a thing of not being fully aware and how to put the words to the emotions that you may
Yeah,
be
I get,
feeling or the comfortableness of it.
I get that. I
But
definitely get that, but I'm joking with you. A lot of times, a lot of times when you know we're both adults and we both been through relationships where I'm a dude and I'm like I don't want to talk about it because I can't. It's the same thing, right? I can't put my thoughts or my words into a thought to get it out to actually talk about it. So it's just like I don't want to talk about it. But but
so
I didn't know when.
we talked about kids being little adults and humans
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
So it's the same thing.
yeah,
So again, so basically that's what I'm saying. The same way in all the emotions that we have as an adult that we have to navigate sometime and we can't put words to it. The kids are the same way. So they need that follow up. They need that post check again and let me make sure they said they were fine, but let me make sure they really were fine and it just wasn't a defense mechanism. So that's what fatherhood looks like for me. That's what I would expect in my next partner. Not that I plan on having any more kids, but yeah.
girl, hey, I'm telling you, you gotta keep them legs put up and stop going to the beach and wearing swimsuits and all that stuff. You know, animal kids. You know,
I don't plan on having no more
people in.
kids. Cause you know, as we said before, I'm of the same thing. I think people with kids should date people with kids, and people without kids should date people. I don't. So
Yeah,
I know the person
yeah,
because they're not going to be able to understand our schedule, and that may be another topic too. But yeah, of course I'm sure the person that I get with next is going to have kids, so that's something we're going to have to navigate. I can't deal with a deadbeat. I'm not going to be with you. You ain't taking care of your kids, and you're not going to be over here taking care of my kids
yeah,
and not taking care of yours. So,
yeah.
but I guess we could wrap that up on fatherhood, parenting. We hope you guys had a good Father's Day out there to all the fathers and everything. Yeah, that's all I got
Yeah.
about fatherhood. What you want to say, Pat?
Nothing. I had a good Father's Day. As long as I get to talk to my babies and my babies know that I love them and that they're okay, you know, I'm good. They were provided for. They had everything. Everybody was happy. So as long as they happy, I'm happy. I got to. I'm a person. I got like a lot of solitude. I had to. Oh, this is one of the things I wanted to say about manhood, and realizing who you are. Right. Sometimes you have to move outside of who you are for your children. Right. So I'm an introvert who likes to be alone all the time. Right. Like a lot. I like to be alone a lot. You know this. I only have a few friends, and that my few friends can fit into the palm of my hand, right? And I rock with them for a long time. So make sure that my children are okay, and then being able to disconnect, that was a blessing for me. So that's what I was able to do on my Father's Day. So it was good. But sometimes we had to step outside of that, and I had to show up for my children in outgoing ways, right? Uh, I'm a person that I don't do surprises. I don't like surprises, but I know my babies do. My babies love gifts. My babies love pop-ups and hey, I'm coming to pick you up. So I have to get outside myself. So as a father, sometimes you have to step outside of who you are. Who you are might be yelling, right? It might be you're a yeller. That's who you are. But for your children, cut that yelling. You know what I mean? Who you are might be uh you like to cook, you love to cook, but your children might not eat what you cook. Let it go, right? You got to learn to let go and move outside yourself, especially as a parent. Like you said, it's a selfless thing, right? You cannot be selfish. You have to be selfless. So be willing to move outside yourself. Being a father is amazing. Being a Black father is amazing. Uh, and I appreciate all the support. You know, Gender Talks. I know we put out some Happy Father's Day things, and we're gonna put out some Happy Mother's Day things, and all kinds of other things. We love y'all. We support y'all. Thank you for supporting us. That's it.
All right, until next time, you guys, don't forget to subscribe, comment, share, DM us some topics. Reach out to us on our social media platforms.